Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with one of my greatest, best friends, Kelly. And we've been together for about 20 months now, every Thursday. And it's nice to have a Monday to kind of mix things up, start the week right. We're expecting another guest, John Chappelear, I believe, if I haven't mispronounced his name. And the word of the day is change management uh,
Ooh,
because that's what John's involved in. So we'll kick it off with chat being wide open and with audience comments being so valuable and important to us to keep us relevant and well directed, as well as provide some really quality takeaways. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly, and Kelly can kind of bring us up to date. I know she just came back from a wonderful convention, and maybe she can share a little bit about that and support the cause and get the name out. And then we'll dive right into change management. So, Kelly, so happy to have you today.
yeah, it's so good to be here on a Monday. Good way to start the week. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. Yeah, so I just got in late last night from Vegas, believe it or not, folks, for a convention put on by the Wounded Blue. It was a law enforcement um, convention, Survival Summit, their fourth annual. I'm going to say it was life changing. I'm a better human for being there. I met some incredible, incredible folks that serve us every day by putting on the uniform and going out and protecting us. So God bless our blue. And so for most of you, if you've been around for a while, like, where's Kelly's cross hat? This is my Wounded Blue hat in honor of the convention and for the organization because they are absolutely incredible. And talking about change management today, you know, they're trying to change the conversation, and I think they're doing an incredible job. And it's a good example to use because I think, you know, even what we do here, Don, and what maybe you started 2 years ago, which is so crazy to think it's been that long ago, is just to make a change, you know, bringing some positivity into the world. Um, and others putting out having a conversation about mental health that, you know, people still have some taboo around it, but the more that we do it and the more that we make it be a normal conversation, which it should be because we all have mental health, every single person does, and why it still has stigma, but talking about these issues and conversations and sharing them with others is a change. And how we can do that within an organization, whether it's with a new process or um, you know, a change in how their goals are, you know, a change in focus, you need buy-on for that. And there is definitely a way about going about it. You know, none of us like to be force-fed anything all at one time. It needs to be more of a slow drip for us to, I think, really take it in and be okay with it because too much is a shock. And as humans, as much as change is part of life, we don't like it. And,
Mhm.
and people can repel from it. But there is a way to deliver it where it isn't so like scary, you know, that we can ingest it. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation, and hopefully John can get on here because I know he was having a little trouble, but you know, I have no doubt we'll manage.
Well, we'll do what the best we can, and I know we'll bring value in no matter how the makeup is today. When I think of change management, a lot of people just focus or gravitate to organizations when really change management has to start with yourself because you have control over that, right? When you're doing change management in an organization, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of discussion, maybe some convincing. But the fastest and easiest change is in yourself.
Mhm.
And like Kelly was able to do is get out of her comfort zone and travel and go to a convention. And without going there, you wouldn't have probably had the same impact on others as well as the impact on others on you.
That's right.
And I think it pays to get your toe in as many waters as possible and really continue to evolve because, like Kelly said, we've been doing this for a couple of years. And although some things have changed dramatically from day one, other things haven't. And for good reason, because there was a
Uh-oh, you froze up. Talk about change management. We're having a lot of change today. Our guest is having a hard time getting on, and now Dawn is frozen. And that happens. But how do we deal with it? This is a perfect example of change. You can't help it sometimes. It just happens. So how are you going to respond to it, react to it, embrace it? Um, and that's all that we can really do. And hopefully, with this little change right now in the show, with the host being not here, that it will evolve into something else. But all we can do is roll with the punches. And I think it's a perfect example, like I said, for what happens not just in life, in a business setting. Of course, we have change, and sometimes we don't even like the change. Whether you're in management or you know anywhere else within the organization, but how do you deal with it? How do you pass it on and again absorb it and roll with it like I just did? Welcome back to your show, Dom.
Well, welcome to be back to myself. That's a little bit of a change. And, internet's a little funky sometimes and restream, but I think that also gives you the appreciation of when things are working well. And sometimes it's not about just doing better, it's just about doing, getting out there every day, and how you adjust to change.
Mhm.
How do you react and respond? Some people freak out. Usually it's because of ignorance or lack of experience or fear. But once you get into the groove, once you're comfortable, it makes it for something you desire. Some people fight tooth and nail to avoid change. They love their routine. They love the comfort of knowing what they're doing all the time, but there's so much you lose because the world's going to continue to change. Technology is going to continue to change. So if you had authority on keeping everything the same everywhere for everybody, then you'd be a rare commodity. And what I'd say is just go with the punches, or go with the flow. Enjoy the change because, you can always go back to what was. You can always do yesterday tomorrow if the new day today doesn't work. You're okay, Kelly.
Sorry, my screen just went totally white for a second. It was like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah, must be something in the universe or something that's creating solar flares or something.
What is going on? That was really weird. Sorry about that.
No, not a problem. We're one-on-one now for adjusting to change, but it keeps you on your toes, makes you use every second wisely, not knowing if there's another second of change coming following it. And I think, life is for the living, for the joy and the beauty of it, and not just from the amount of money you make or the materialism, but the real feeling that you get. And I know from what Kelly was sharing with me about the convention, that's priceless. The feelings that you can get through the empathy for others. And also, you feel fortunate for yourself, that you don't, people don't know what they have until they usually lose it, or they compare themselves to somebody who's so much less fortunate than themselves. And you almost feel sorry that you had to even think, why aren't I doing better? Why don't I have more? And really, I guess the question becomes is what are you doing? And everybody can do something. It could be reading, it could be watching, it could be joining conversations like this, creating conversations for yourself like this. And I think that's the premium that people receive when they actually go out there and do something that's a little bit uncomfortable. Even exercise to some people is challenging. And too many people, I think, get competitive.
Yeah.
They want to be Arnold, overnight. And Arnold didn't get to be Arnold overnight. So, I think everybody should give themselves a little bit more credit, become their own best friend instead of sometimes their own worst enemy. And how do you share this change management with others to have them feel more comfortable in making that move, Kelly.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting approach because I think regardless if it's business or personal, it's the same. It's about if you know that there's this big change coming or something that's happening and you're needing to pass it on to someone else, how do you pass it on? Do you pass it on in one fell swoop and just drop it on them the same way it was dropped on you? Or do you drop it in a way that is ingestible, in the sense of that they can take it in without being like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. It's terrible. This is the worst idea. Things are great the way they are. Because regardless if our current situation, status, workflow, whatever it is that we're talking about, we get comfortable with things, whether or not it's good or bad, because comfort does look not good sometimes. We get comfortable with bad habits and bad things. And to make those changes stick, and I do think I'm saying this stat correctly, if we do something 21 days in a row, it now becomes a habit. So if you think about, hey, I've got this change I want to do, maybe exercise, great example. The reason why everybody fails at the beginning of the year when everybody's like, I'm going to get in the most amazing shape of my life starting January 1. And they maybe go for like the first 5 days or whatever it is, the first week. I mean, the statistics are insane of how many people will join a gym, a new program, whatever it is. And within 2 weeks, they're out of it because it's not a habit yet. You just claimed this whole thing, but you didn't have any change management plan for yourself that was achievable. But if you do something and say, and make it be realistic, hey, you know what? I want to change this much, but in order to do this, I need to start with this. So go out, walk around the block. Hey, check, done. Next day, maybe do a block and a half. Maybe in the next week, do the first week a block, whatever it is. And then check it off and keep increasing. Don't do your goal from day one. That's why people fail. And stop. I don't even want to say fail because failure can be igniting into doing something else, but that's why they stop. And I think another great example, Dawn, is you doing lives. If someone would have told you that you would have done, 700 and however many days it was in a row of doing a live stream, hey, Dawn, Cohen, I want you to do 700 and whatever live streams in a row, you would have been like, you're out of your mind. Like, that's not going to happen because it's too overwhelming to think that that's accomplishable. I don't even know if that's actually a word, but you know what I'm saying. But you took it one day at a time, and then it became a habit, and it became part of who you are. So it wasn't like it was an effort, but again, when you're looking at things from the outside as the goal, instead of just one day at a time, which is really just life in general. We can't really go past the one day at a time. So putting them in bits where we can actually accomplish them and celebrate them, give yourself a pat on the back when I don't care that it was just a walk around the block. Yay me, it was more than I did yesterday. I think, those changes, and that's the same in business. If you have a big shift in what you're doing with the goals in your organization, got to feed it to your team a little bit that way. I'm not talking about your executive team. Your executives usually get the whole dump on them, and they're the ones that have to figure out, hey, how are we going to put this to the masses? But people are going to resist, and you have to figure out what is it going to look like to get more people to be excited about change, because change is exciting. It is growth, and it's not always something to be feared of or for. And it's always going to happen. So you got to figure a way of how you're going to approach it. You're going to jump into it, or are you going to sit and hesitate for a minute and go, I need to think about this a little bit longer before I dive into it. But it's not going to go away. And that's always the interesting thing, right? Because the longer we sit on the sideline for something that's going to change or that has changed, it's not going anywhere. And the more that we wait on the sideline, the harder it is to jump into it later.
Yeah, I think you make some really important key points there. is, change is something you've been doing all your life.
Mhm.
And if you can reflect back on when you first started to ride a bicycle, but back then you couldn't wait to ride a bicycle because it was so cool and it gave you freedom and mobility and exercise and fresh air that it was worth kind of nicking a couple knees and having to get up off the ground and maybe wiping a few tears away. But eventually you did it. And eventually it became secondhand and you never thought about falling again or having that disappointment. And you can take that to when you first started school. You know, anything you want started with not knowing, but hopefully faith and believing. And
Mhm.
I think that's so important when you know you're not just it, but part of it,
Yeah.
the solution or the equation. You feel so much better because you're not alone.
Mm.
You feel that there's something ahead of you or behind you or under you that supports you, and you're always going to come back to yourself. And I think most people get focused on what other people think. If you make a mistake, all of a sudden that mistake becomes much bigger to you than anybody else,
Mhm.
because you got to ask yourself, how many people did you remember yesterday or the day before who made a mistake and it stuck in your mind? You don't look at, boy, that person matched wrong, or boy, that person looked different. You just accept it. And you have to understand you're accepted. And really, it's about your friends and your strangers, and really only care about the people who care about you. The other people, you're just a distraction or not even seen most of the time. And trying to please too many people may be at the expense of happiness for yourself. And I know there's so many people out there serving others,
Mhm.
waiting on others, depending on others, and it squeezes out their identity and their ability to move forward. Napoleon Hill said the worst thing you can do is listen to your friends, family, and neighbors, because they'll direct you in ways they think might be beneficial, but most of the time it's their ways or their ways for you that they would like to see, and they don't know enough, and they shouldn't have that responsibility, and you shouldn't give them that much credit. The other element of change management is the management side. There's the change side, but how do you manage change? Like you mentioned, Kelly, if you start something new, start it from an academic standpoint, not from a performance standpoint, from a curiosity standpoint. I just want to know what's behind the corner there.
Yeah.
I don't have any, reason to expect something is going to do something that it had nothing to do with. Too many people do things to compensate for other things that were not related. Having a bad day, well, I'm going to have an ice cream sundae. Well, you should have an ice cream sundae because you want an ice cream sundae, not because you had a bad day. Two things. One thing you'll connect the two, and pretty soon, every time you have a bad day, you'll start having a sundae. And the other thing is give yourself some time.
Mm.
From a standpoint of being able to say, well, this just happened. It's too heavy right now to deal with. Let me get back to it when I'm in a better position, because too many people overreact, do things that are not out of character, get angry, get frustrated, and that only hurts everybody involved. So,
Mm.
I think when you look at life as an adventure, as a blessing, as every day as no one can count on it, enjoy the simple things that are free, are always available to you. And sometimes those are better pursuits than the things that are competitive or very short lived. How many times do you get real happy and then it just like a bubble just burst and now you're back to where you were? You want to get a strong foothold and you want to build one stair step at a time. So, Kelly, I know you've been working for Wheelchairs for Warriors. I think that's a wonderful change for you over the time we've gotten to meet. Why don't you share a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, so which is why I was at the convention with Wheelchairs for Warriors. Yeah, major change, right? And I think this is something I believe a lot of people can actually relate to, is being an executive in the capital markets, private equity space for as long as I was and getting laid off in 2020, and not being able to get hired was a change I was not prepared for. Nor was it something that I realized how much it was going to impact me personally, emotionally, all the things, because I realized that so much of my career and my accomplishments was my identity, and I didn't realize how much my work was my identity. And it gave me introspection during that time, not being able to get hired, which was horrible because I'd never experienced that in my life. That was a major change. But also realizing and having introspection enough to be like, I want to do something that actually makes a difference in the world. I loved what I did. I was good at what I did in capital markets and private equity. Very proud of the work I did, but it wasn't changing lives. It wasn't enriching me in a very deep way. I was proud of my accomplishments, but it's just different. And so I thought I really want to make a difference and be focused more on service instead of just a paycheck. Um, which don't get me wrong, I still need a paycheck, but you know what I'm saying. And finding wheelchairs for warriors and what they do and the change, because the only reason that wheelchairs for warriors was even born was out of a lack thereof. Seeing that there was this gap in um, fulfilling the need for our veterans and first responders to get custom mobility solutions, following them being injured in the line of duty. And part of me was sort of like, well, what do you mean? They get injured in the line of duty and they can't get a wheelchair or a mobility solution that they need in order to live just their day-to-day stuff. That seems crazy to me. Like, why doesn't that already exist? And finding out that, our VA, not saying any of these places are horrible as a whole, but some folks do have a lot of difficulty getting what they need from the VA and or other insurance organizations, through first responders specifically, when I'm saying that, and not being able to get a wheelchair, which seems nuts to me. And thinking, you serve all of us to be able to sit where you and I are right now in front of a microphone to talk to folks. It just seemed crazy to me. Like, but what a blessing that someone thought, I want to fill this gap because our heroes deserve so much better, and started a change. She never thought she was going to have a nonprofit, and here born, is a nonprofit called Wheelchairs for Warriors that fills this gap, for our warriors, which again seems nuts that it needs to exist, but then it's such a blessing that it exists, and it's a change for me in the way of the corporate part is gone, I guess. We still run as a business. Obviously, there's just certain functions that you have to do, but there's also things that are a lot different because it doesn't have that, super corporate structure in the sense you have to act a certain way, you have to be a certain way. We just want people who have big hearts that want to help make a difference in the world, make a change, help support these heroes that have been, and as harsh as this may sound for some, they talk about never leaving anyone behind. And that's such a big thing. But witnessing and hearing these stories of these heroes of, yeah, they weren't left behind on the battlefield, but they were brought home and they were just dumped in their home and left to figure it out themselves. That's mortifying to me. And it's just so sad to think I went from this totally structured life working, with as a first responder and or as a veteran and knowing what I was doing every minute of every day. But then I have an injury and I can no longer perform my duties. So now I'm home and I have nothing. Everyone's abandoned me. I've got no one supporting me. And I don't have what I need. And that just feels, ugh, like so sad. And that's what we should all be doing, is helping one another instead of judging each other, which is a lot of what social media unfortunately exemplifies is, hey, let's pick apart whomever that we don't even know. But when we can use it in such a positive way to help each other and improve each other's lives and quality of lives. And I think today is National Share Love Day or something like that. I'm off a little bit, but it has to do with love and giving love. And it just reminded me of this whole thing. And the convention I was just at is, if we just spent more time loving each other instead of breaking each other down, and being rewarded for that on social media, is just, it's so sad. So there's a change that we can do, and y'all can manage that change is just giving a little bit more love and support for each other. That's what community is all about. And I think that's what you started, that day 2 years ago, when I don't think you really knew where you were going, but that's the impact you've made. You have made a massive change, I think, in so many people's lives, not just mine, but in many, and many I think that you'll never even know about. That's all I
Well,
think.
thank you so much, Kelly. And I think you bring out a good point. Is we have the ability to use social media
Mm.
for virtuous things, for quality things, for comforting things, supporting things, and not tearing people down, and it also spreads. It doesn't stop, it ripples. And, if we can start the right ripple, get people to embrace it and then support it and then find their own voice. I could see where a lot of the people you're talking about who stood up for us and no one's standing up for them would love to have a platform to continue to expand the messaging, because people are too self-interested to really take the time to show an interest in others and make room for others and be generous in their support and praise. And some people don't want to be marginalized or minimized, and they want to come out from the shadows and show the value they have in themselves, because sometimes what you lost wasn't maybe the most important thing in your life, which was your beliefs, which were, your character, your integrity, the intangibles, the unseeable things, but the most valuable things. And I think that would make a big difference, because people need something to look forward to. They need purpose. They need something to say, here's why I'm here every day. And just giving somebody a place to live and food to eat is not the best way of exercising one's human spirit and ability to share. And with that, I've got Harvey Tuck here, who, if you're talking about love, Harvey is right up there with all of us and has been with us through this journey. And it has been a journey. And I couldn't be more proud of Harvey for what he's accomplished in a short time, a year plus, that he's been focused on live streaming, not only as a guest on this show, but his franchise shows on Tuesday, which follows my show, and his Thursday franchise brand show, and his ability to really expand and reach out. And the joy of it is seeing how many people Harvey is now touching and influencing and being influenced, how big his circle continues to grow. And this is just a year plus into it. Most of it was just getting our feet under us, and being able to get comfortable and understand what it was. And now we're all flourishing. And then we've got the cohort group that we have that now lends itself to knowledge sharing among many people doing things. I know Carl Dakin just started his second show on Thursdays, and now he's really taken the lead. He's got a couple of newsletters. And it's so much easier to learn with and from so many other people than do it yourself. So cooperation, partnership is so good. Harvey says, hello, my two lovely friends. Sorry I'm a little late. Great to be here and to listen and learn and support. Anytime, Harvey, with you is good time. Wheelchairs for Warriors is such a fantastic and vital idea. I still can't believe it didn't exist. And you're right. Never leave someone behind should apply to our everyday lives. That's such a good point, Harvey, because you never know what people are going through. And a smile, a kind gesture, a good greeting. I was kind of going back and going through my old audibles, and I was listening to Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And today's discussion was all about accepting things and taking responsibility. The best way to win an argument is not to argue. Is
Amen.
just, right? Is just to say, you make a great point. I wasn't aware of it, thinking, thank you for bringing attention, because the other lesson he shared is a no is harder to overcome once it's said, because most people feel they have to hang in there with it or justify it. And sometimes it's not that important, sometimes it's better to say, you must know more or understand it better, and I know you're more involved in it. I accept it. Thank you so much. I think recognition goes a long way. Most people go into a fight ready for another fight, and they get disarmed when you're kind and thoughtful and appreciative of it, and I think gratitude goes so much further. Knowing even if you're ahead, if you think you are somebody else, you were where they were at one time. And if it wasn't for somebody opened the door for you or lifted you up or gave you some recognition or appreciation, that might have kept you going. And not the last, but the third comment, it's also National Podcast Day. They should have a national live stream day. And you are right about Don changing lives, changed mine. Meeting Don and you is a pivotal moment. Took me down a good road. And Kelle, it really does only take one connection.
Change your life.
To change your life. And now we're coming fast and furious. Although John wasn't able to make it, Harvey's done more to compensate for our third party here. Loving the heart, Kelle, always good to be here. Reminds me of when I first watched this with you and Kelle. Being an audience here feels just as good as it did. What you do is very special, not to be underestimated. And it's that confirmation of knowing your friends are there for you, not always in front of you, not always around you, but there for you, and you're there for them. And it makes you feel like you're part of something that's much bigger than yourself. And I think anytime you become something bigger than yourself, the pettiness, the little things that you used to find inconvenient, you don't have time to think about. When you're helping others and their issues are more important in so many ways than yours, it's that rarity that stands out. It's not the mighty yeller, screamer, pounder on the table that wins the day. It's the soft-spoken kindness that is so rare today. The taking the time, could be 10 seconds, it could be 10 minutes, just to make a difference in somebody's life. And it's selfish almost. It makes such a big difference for you. So how do you give so much for so many and feel blessed that you even had the opportunity? Everybody looks at things as a cost and return. Well, if I spend money here, or I spend time there, what am I going to get for it? You're going to get nothing if you think like that, because you're already coming in with a minus, as opposed to, what can I learn here? How can I grow from this person? Because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a life that they lived. And people don't always have the time. Some people don't always have the attributes to be a great speaker. But when they talk about sincerity, everybody shines. And you respect them. And it's also the people who you wouldn't think. I mean, look at all the, Paralympics, right? How many people, who have stepped out and had disabilities or challenges now become champions.
I do have to interject and say one of our recipients from Wheelchairs for Warriors, he won gold in archery at the Paralympics.
And isn't that great? Because his gold medal is just as valuable as anybody's gold medal.
Yes.
And here's Harvey typing away. Yes, John and Kelle, if someone is unkind, then floor them with kindness.
Yes.
I remember when someone picked a fight with me in a fish and chip shop. I just gave him a hug and said, come on, I'll buy you some chips. It disarmed him. And that's Harvey for you. What I remember about Harvey is one of the first times he came on the show, and he talked about the time with his parents when he was at the beach and somebody lost their wedding ring. right? And he spent hours diving for it and ultimately found it. And what that showed is perseverance, commitment, and the desire to do something that somebody said, well, the average person might say, it's not my wedding ring. Why would I want to do that? But there's something innate about live streaming that brings the best out in people and sometimes brings people out in ways that maybe they shouldn't be accepting. And maybe that's the reason for change, because we can model things. It's not just what we do, it's what we can allow other people to do. And if you're watching the show, listening to the show, this is your opportunity for change. And maybe one day, just like Kelle, just like Harvey, just like myself, can say, well, it was this day when things started to change, because nothing, for things to change, you need to change. So, yeah. Kelle, Harvey says, your cup just made me laugh.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, sorry. Sorry. I don't know how to cover this up. Yeah, so you're awesome. Keep it up.
And Harvey, if you're going to be with us, be happy to bring you on the show.
Yes.
You've got an extra seat. If you like, I'll send you the link. And, always appreciate Harvey. And, let me just get him going. Meanwhile, your turn, Kelle.
I mean, so many great things were said there. And I think it is important about, I think one of the things that we don't remember often enough is to listen. You're 100% right. Everybody has a story. But sometimes we get caught into the thing of we're so eager to answer or to interject something when we hear somebody say something, and then we're thinking about how to reply instead of actually listening. Mm-hmm. And listening to someone else's story, and this is one of the things of doing live streaming and maybe just being alive, that I find I see so differently now from doing live streaming, is what a gift it is to be able to hold someone in the space when they're sharing their story. Because a lot of times people will go to places that are very emotional. I mean, this week when I was at this convention for the Wounded Blue, the room, and you could feel the room of, a couple hundred people holding space for this person that you knew was so uncomfortable. Initially, they wanted to share, but they were afraid to share. But then once they felt the hold from the room, because you can feel when someone really cares about what you're saying and is actually listening to you and holding space, of what a privilege and what a gift that is. I'm not going to lie, there were some stories that part of me was like, ooh, I can't unhear that. But there were also other parts that it was like, I couldn't wait till they were finished so that I could go find them and give them a hug. And I even went to a couple of people, and of course, when we introduced, and there were some high-ranking people there, but when they put their hand out to shake my hand to introduce, when we were introducing ourselves, I was like, hey, I'm a hugger. Would you mind? And then, of course, when you hug someone and you pull them in and you hold them, you can feel that whole thing of when they might be hesitant at first, but then they go into it and you feel it. And you're like, man, that was amazing. And that's changed because you've just exchanged love on this love day. And speaking of love day, my favorite humans on the planet, Mr. Harvey.
Harvey Tuck in person. We couldn't get enough of his comments, so we brought the whole Harvey in today. And what a surprise.
It saved me typing, yeah?
Yeah, it's been a while since the three of us have been live together, and it brings back so many beautiful memories. And, every one of these shows, I've learned a little bit of something over time, and I've learned a lot about the people involved. And it really does make a difference. So, Harvey, why don't you bring everybody up to date? And especially with everything you're doing, it's fantastic. I'm so proud of you.
Kelly's cup is making me laugh again.
It is pretty great. I'm sorry. I didn't even realize that I had this one this morning. I apologize for anyone that's offended, but it is meant in such a great place.
Oh, they can't be offended. They can't be offended. You do so many lovely things. It's a funny cup. Oh my goodness. Gosh, so many things have happened since I have last been here. But I think I mentioned on the comments, it was all to do with taking, a road, and that was a huge amount to do with the wonderful people I'm sitting next to today. And I was trying to trace back the other day when and how I first met the wonderful Don Cohen, but I can't quite trace it back. But it was a wonderful meeting to have, and has taken me down a road I never thought I would go down, on National Podcast Day, even though I don't do a podcast. Oh, look, there's another fine gentleman.
Yeah, just to interrupt for a second, John had a little misunderstanding with the timing.
Yes.
So it was an hour later, and that does happen. You're coming into one of the most wonderful shows we've ever done is today, because Harvey came in unexpected. Harvey's been with us over a year, part of our cohort group. Kelly's been with us almost 2 years, both extremely accomplished live streamers.
Good.
I'll just have John share a little bit. John, with this, we actually created a show for you in a way because the topic was change management, and there's definitely a lot of changes took place in this show. Being disconnected, new guests unexpected, and expected guests not, and coming back together. So, John, why don't you share a minute or two, and everybody up to date.
Well, welcome home from the hurricane, ladies and gentlemen. It was pretty crazy. We are sort of on the edge, and it was such a big hurricane. It was pretty weird. We lost power and Wi-Fi for like a day and a half, 2 days. But my assistant lives in Asheville, North Carolina, which is the one that had the houses floating down the river and the mudslides, and so I've been staying in touch with her because she only gets occasional telephone service. So I get these little like SOS, can you please call the Asheville Fire Department and tell them that I, kind of thing. So, and I haven't heard from her this morning, so I'm still a little leery. I haven't heard from her since yesterday evening, but I'm hoping that's because things are getting better. As you can tell, I'm not a young man. I started out at about 6'3" and had a full head of hair, and this is what business has done to me. Over my career, I've worn down to this nub of a man you see before you. I started and built 5 companies in the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I was born and raised, and started the first company at 30, and they were each successful in their own ways. And I'm very proud of that fact. About 25 years ago, I ran into what I call a gift of devastation, which caused a huge change in my life because the company that I had built up, the bank walked in. Actually, this is 91. Bank walked in and said, "We'd like our money back." If you go back and look at the financial issues of the day, that was when the banks were told to take all of their over-bloated real estate off their books and count them as assets. So they took that all off their books, and then they needed cash. They looked around at the loans they had out there, and guess what? I had lots of assets and lots of cash. So it was like, thanks, John. We'll take your money and your cash, and we'll see you later. Started another company that ran for about 12 years. And then at that point, I realized I'm really not happy with this. I liked what I did before. It was a good company. It was a much smaller company, very profitable. I just never liked the industry, which was printing. I was brokering. I had a brokerage company that did printing brokerage, so anything from business cards to newspapers. And it was a lot of fun and really good. But printers seem to be the mechanical version of painters. So they only show up sober about half the time. And so it makes printing very expensive if they make mistakes on large projects. So I thought, I've lost enough money on this business. It was very profitable, but when and you're only making 5 or 6% off the top, you can't afford to reprint something for somebody because the printer forgot what color it is. So at that point, I had been in a program called Leadership Washington, which most cities have leadership programs now, leadership whatever. And this was in 1988, which is probably before either of you were born. So I'm not going to try to believe
Look at my beard.
I do see this. Oh, yeah. Okay.
No comment.
And in about 10 years after I had been through the program and stayed in touch and was on the board of directors, somebody said, you've gone through all this crazy stuff with that business that you had, back about 10 years ago. And yet you seem to be kind of cool and calm and collected as you went through this change. How did that happen? Because I know you and you aren't a cool, calm and collected guy. You're usually strangling success out of the throat of the future. And I said, well, I kind of had to find a different path along the way to create a life that wasn't beginning with suicidal. So I have a long story about my son sort of turning into my 3-year-old Yoda and putting me on a different path. And he just kind of changed my mind one day when we were rolling around on the floor, which made me realize that if I wanted to change the way in which I felt, all I needed to do was change the way I was focusing and what I was focusing on. And so I realized that I didn't want to rebuild another company. I wanted to find a different path, and maybe I could help spread this success addiction, which is what I think success is the most addictive substance there is to man. You just want, I got a little of that, a little more. And you put your family on the back burner and you do all kinds of stuff and you wait till you get everything up perfect up here in the front. And then you're going to go back and pay attention to them. And unfortunately, they're not chess pieces. They're people. So they wander around all by themselves back there and create plans with or without you. And so I wrote a book, came out 20 years ago. Actually, I'm writing the 20th anniversary. It should be out before the end of the year, which is the 20th anniversary is 2025. Talks about building a life with success and significance, not just being successful at all costs. But there's a value associated with being given the gifts we're given, and that is to give back. And so for me, it was focusing on, if you want to issue as a change, the idea is the change, if the change is out here is not what you want, then the change needs to be focused here. Because we're always trying to fix all this stuff out here. It's like going to the movies and trying to fix the projector, which may be words people don't remember, but the projector is out of focus. You don't go up to the screen and try and fix the screen. You go back to the projector and fix the lens. And that's kind of how we are. We are sort of the lenses of our lives. And so for me, it was finding a whole different way to build a company on a completely different set of principles. And so I wrote that book. It was called The Daily Six. It is called The Daily Six. And it just talks about 6 simple things that you can try and do on a daily basis that will keep you on a path that has done wonders for me and almost every client I've ever had and companies I've worked with too. So for me, change is an integral part of everything I do every day, including getting up every morning and doing some prayer meditation. I don't have any religious issues. So that, for me, anytime I had a person wanted to ask me if I would write the book from a Christian perspective. And I said, well, I would love to, since that's how I was raised, but no thanks. Because anytime you put a fence down, there's somebody on the other side. And I didn't want to put any fences down. I wanted this to be an all-inclusive thing. It's not like I thought up any of these ideas. I didn't think up love and forgiveness, for goodness sakes. I just found that if I used them, they would allow me to change. And as I changed, then this changed. It was astounding how, as I got calmer, more peaceful, and more welcoming, people began to get calmer and more peaceful and more welcoming around me. So what a surprise. So I've been doing keynotes and training and writing a lot since we moved here to Florida in 2004 when the book came out. And for me, the thing I wrote about change at one point was there's a number of things I've written about change, but the one that sort of sticks in most people's minds is change the management or change the management. You get the thing is, that's the realistic content from being an owner of a business and employing hundreds of employees, is that you can teach them, encourage them, engage them, and warmly welcome everybody in. But everybody's not going to buy into what you're talking about.
Yeah.
People are going to think, yeah, he's just trying to walk me down this road and catch me down here, just like my last boss did, because everybody you hire shows up with all the tapes from all the managers and all the leaders they ever had before they walked in your door. And so not only to build trust, which is the primary cathartic issue associated with change, to get to that point of trust, you have to have a consistent issue, consistent behavior. And that's why the book was written, to help me sort of realize, hey, I'm off that path a little bit. So there's a very long introduction. Sorry about that. I do have a tendency I've drank way too much coffee this morning. So
No, you didn't. You're great.
That's kind of.
Oh, that's great, John, and that's the reason I decided or thought you'd be a wonderful addition. Fortunately, you came into a show with Kelle and Harvey, who are just the top of the top, and I'm not just saying that. I try to be as sincere, as honest as possible, but we all share the same thread, which is a good heart and a desire to do good for others. And that's a good foundation to build from, because you can't lose. When it's all about you and that's it, you have to build on the back of others and take advantage of people. And you're actually taking advantage of yourself when that's happening. Now, I know you had a strong career in keynote speaking, and you've done a lot. And I guess for reference to hurricane, you're in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So you were kind of facing the biggest brunt, even though it kind of went more west of you.
Yeah, that's why Asheville was such a big problem, because it went straight north from Tallahassee.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be grateful for what you don't have and what you don't experience.
Right.
So, Harvey, any questions you might have for John, or thoughts about what John said?
No, it's, first of all, great to meet you, John. I mean, some fascinating things there that you said. I mean, I've always thought that acceptance is key to commitment.
Amen.
And accepting the fact that sometimes things do change for the good, for not so good.
Well,
someone once said to me, change what you can and accept what you can't. And I think that's quite a good mantra to live by, because if you can't change something, then you can't change it. So accept it and work around it, or focus on other things. And I think the other thing that resonated with me for what you said is that it starts from within. And you can change that. So you can't, as an example, you can't change how someone acts towards you, what they say about you, how they think about you, but you can change how you react to that.
Right.
We were just talking before about killing people with kindness, even if they're unkind to you. I was talking about a time that someone picked a fight with me in a fish and chip shop. I've gone very British, fish and chips, isn't it? But
I could hear that a little. Just
but they picked a fight with me, and I didn't want to fight them. And I said, "Come on, give me a hug. I'll buy you some chips." And it disarmed them. It disarmed them because they expected me to rise to the fact that they were being vile and horrible. And so I couldn't change the fact that that person came in wanting a fight. But by reacting in a different way, it changed the outcome of what would have been a fight if I had been so inclined. So, yeah, I think change should be embraced as well. Since I've met the wonderful people that are sitting in the boxes above me, my life has certainly changed, in what I've done in a very unexpected and very pleasant way. It's been hard work, and I can't believe it's only been just sort of over a year since that fork in the road. But yes, so I think fascinating hearing what you've said, and I think my final message is to embrace change and accept change. And
Kelle, what's your read?
I mean, so many great things that were just said, and I can't help but, what came to mind during both of those things were the serenity prayer. And I can't help but I think the serenity prayer, everybody always associates it to AA. I'm like, man, it's a life mantra.
It was written a lot earlier than AA was founded. I can assure you of that.
Yes, exactly. Accepting the things that we cannot change, the wisdom to change the things that we can't, or the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
I'm pretty close. I'm not completely accurate, but you all get the gist. And I think that's beautiful because it applies to all of us on our day-to-day of how we do things and the way that we look at life. And what Harvey was just saying, if somebody would have told me that getting on one live stream a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, actually, how it would have changed my life and the course of my life and the people that I would have interacted with and have become friends with, who have changed who I am and have allowed me to become a better human, I would have questioned it because it's like, what can a live stream do? Like doing a show with someone, how is that going to change anything?
Right.
But it changed everything.
Uh-huh.
And it is all about how we look at things because it refocused things about others because it was all about serving. And I think when we look at life through that lens of about service to others and how much that feeds our own souls and what it does for us, for happiness, for how we wake up every morning. I mean, I'm blessed every day I wake up, I have gratitude. And you don't realize how the smallest little change in your life does change everything. And I'll leave it there.
Well, I think, Kelle just came back from a wonderful convention in Las Vegas for helping a lot of people who are first responders, who could use some help, is also the outreach person for Wheelchairs for Warriors. That makes a huge difference in people's lives. And, reflecting back, it's kind of like an anniversary show. Not only have we grown up, but we've grown together and enjoyed and supported each other's growth. So, someone said, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others. And I think that's so true. And, people tend to find where they are based on potluck. Got out of school, knew a friend, had a plumbing company. I ended up working for the plumbing company, or walked into somewhere and I'm still there 30 years later. So, how do you make that pivot? And it's usually someone who allows you to get to know yourself now better. And maybe at one point what you did serve you and was exciting. But why not keep that flame alive? And why not make that flame impact so many others? And, I was even reading Charlie Munger's book, who's partners with Warren Buffett.
Oh, yeah.
And two of the richest men who ever walked the earth. And Warren said, looking back, the only thing that matters in life is how people look at you after you're gone. And what did you do when you were here? Not how much money you made or any of that. And, when people who have made billions and done so much allow you to find the same value they found, you're on equal footing, sometimes ahead of them, because some of the most profound, impactful people were the most humble, modest people who never had a lot of material things, but they made a huge difference. And you like to feel like you have value. And sometimes the valuables in your life don't create that value. It actually will take you off course because you get mesmerized by the shining object or what someone else has. And going inside is so much more valuable than trying to project outside. So, I think these are the lessons we try to learn and teach and share because they're profound and important. And, with that said, we're at top of the hour. I'll let everybody. This is a different show. It came together in multiple ways because it got better as time went on. Even though if it was just me and Kelly, it would be more than enough, And just by being together makes it valuable, and anything that comes from it is even more valuable. So I'll let Harvey have his final thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to go for something based upon what Kelly said when she said she felt blessed, because I want to share a story about my son. And I picked up my son, and we stopped at a shop. He wanted to get a drink and some chocolate. And he went into the shop, and I saw him bend down and give a coin to a homeless person who was sitting outside.
Oh.
And as we drove off, the homeless person gave my son the biggest smile. And my son said to me that he said he feels blessed. And he said, if you feel blessed, you should make others feel blessed too.
Oh.
And it was such a powerful thing to come from a 15-year-old boy. And it was one of those moments as a parent that you are just touched and proud. And it's a message that should be delivered to everyone. So I'm going to leave it there.
I agree. Wonderful story.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Harvey. And it shows you did something or allowed something to happen that happened because of it. And you were able to move through and with your son and look at all the good he has yet to do with that foundation and that philosophy. So it's just beginning. Kelly?
I mean, oh my gosh. First of all, Harvey, big major virtual hug, because as a parent, you had to be looking at your son and knowing that's a reflection of you, my friend. That is incredibly beautiful. And I wish more of us would look at the world like that. Nobody sat on the street or is sitting on the street currently, and they weren't a child and said, God, I can't wait to be homeless and sitting on the street someday begging. There's a story there. And I think that it's so important for people to remember, you don't know people's journeys, and just know that there is power in a smile to someone. You don't have to say words. Exchanging a heartfelt smile with someone else, and I know this for a fact, does save lives. So do remember that, because the change in the world that we all talk about all the time, people sit on the sidelines, critique it, talk about all these things, will be the change. Do something. And you can do something as small as that, putting positivity out in the world. And like I like to say is, just go out into this world and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
That's always a beautiful ending, and I've been hearing it every Thursday for 21 months we've been together, me and Kelly. And Harvey, I follow his shows Tuesdays and Thursdays following my show, and I couldn't be prouder of all the people we're involved with and the excitement of the future that lies ahead of all of us and for us. So we're on a good path. So John, I'll let you say final thoughts. I know this is new to you as far as being with us.
It's yeah, I got something out of that. It's I like the fact that I'm sitting with three people that are very like-minded. That's a nice change for, rather than looking at me in 2004 when I wrote a book about love and forgiveness being really important in leadership, and he looked at me like, "Are you out of your effing mind?" So, having grown up in business, you don't do that. I mean, I got out of college and went to work for my father, and 9 years later realized this guy is out of his mind. I don't want to work here anymore. So I left and started my own business. And the thing I learned about that is, and I told my girls both this, I have two lovely, lovely, lovely daughters, and I have a son. And the thing was, move where you want to live, because you'll get wrapped into the workplace. You'll be joining clubs and groups and social things and get a mortgage and all these other things. And then you'll be wherever you were stuck, So I got a daughter who lives in Hawaii and another daughter that lives in Atlanta. Neither one of them lived in DC. I got a son who teaches skateboard lessons in San Diego. You can't get any more freewheeling than that.
Nope.
I wrote a reasonably good-sized article about accept it, leave it, or change it. Those are the three options. I got a video on YouTube that talks about three options. You'll have three options in everything you've ever done. Accept it, leave it, or change it. And one of those other diffusing phrases I've used from time to time is, you might be right. And they don't know what to say to that. It's like, okay, thanks, kind of thing. It's like, so I'm very grateful to be here. Look forward to catching up some more with Don, and hopefully on time this time.
Well, that'll always be the beginning of our story, and everybody needs a before and after.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more thankful for starting the week with two of my established best friends and maybe one future best friend. And how do you beat that so early in the morning? And it's just getting started. So I want to thank Kelle, Harvey, and John for making this possible, and look forward to continuing to build into the future. I want to thank the audience for being here, and look forward to tomorrow. I've got Beverly Glazer, who's here every Tuesday with Women's Empowerment Over 50 is her niche, and it only gets better from there. So thank you all. Thank you, audience, and look forward to seeing everybody 23.